So in anticipation for Marvel Studios' Daredevil Born Again, I am taking a look back down memory lane. I'm going to be doing a little movie commentary or episode TV commentary on Daredevil Season 2, Episode 3, New York's Finest. What I consider to be the best episode of the Netflix show. AKA the episode where the Punisher chains up Daredevil to a rooftop and they debate philosophy and ethics for a whole hour. Yes, that is the best episode of Daredevil. It is just so well written, so well performed, so well shot. I mean, the whole show is well written, well performed, and well shot. Though, a thing I will point about Season 3, because I rewatched Season 3 recently, is that Season 3 is my least favorite looking season, but in no way, shape, or form does that mean that the cinematography is bad. It's just that when you compare it to the first two seasons, it's lacking like the color and the contrast. I don't know. It still looks way better than the color grading for Daredevil Born Again, that's for sure. I'm not disputing that. But no, I love Marvel's Daredevil. It's weird. Can I call it Netflix's Daredevil because like it's on Disney Plus now? But anyways, this is one of my favorite shows ever made. Like, it is so well crafted, so well acted, so well performed, so well just everything. And this episode, I find, just really highlights and accentuates that. So let's just get into the episode. But before we get into the episode, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, specifically Instagram and TikTok. It's all linked down in the description. I'm also an actor and filmmaker myself, so check out my latest short film, The Shining Optimism of VF Manar. Also, if you're interested, check out the link in the description to my Indiegogo campaign for my upcoming fantasy short film, The Singer's Tale. Any contribution, even if it is as little as £1, is greatly appreciated. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get into Daredevil Season 2, Daredevil Season 2, Episode 3, World's Finest. Ah, the old Marvel logo with the flashing comic book panels. Why did the movies move away from this? Like, really? I don't get it. It's quite upsetting, like, why did they move away from this? This is where it all started from. And no, I'm not going to go on my whole Marvel Studios logo rant because I've done it enough recently and I'm a bit tired of it. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, just look at this opening with this nun, who I believe is Sister Maggie. And obviously in Season 3, we get introduced to Sister Maggie, played by Joanne Whaley. But just right from here, you can tell the way it's shot, the way it's lit. You know, the bit where the water turns into blood. The artistry and the symbology behind the show just... it all feels intrinsically and authentically Daredevil. You know, we have the themes of persevering and never giving up. We have the Catholic symbology, which is all integrally tied to Matt Murdock. Everything about this show is just so authentically Daredevil. Every little thing about this show does something to further the character of Daredevil. This transition is so cool. Like, obviously they did not move from the Bolt to Charlie Cox in real life. Obviously it's a stitch cut, but it's so cool. It's so well done. It's so well shot. This show has so many cool camera moves and has so many cool scene transitions. Just how can you not love this show? This is like easily the best thing Marvel as a company has ever made.
Morning sunshine.
God, John Bernthal, my boy Johnny B, is so good as the Punisher, and we'll obviously talk about more of his performance in this episode as we get further into the episode, but he is so good as Frank Castle. The one thing in my eyes that holds him back from looking like Frank Castle is the fact that he constantly keeps growing out his hair, and then he keeps shaving it off, and it's like, no, just let him be the Punisher, because you get to the end of Daredevil Season 2, and he looks like the Punisher. And then when you get to Season 1 of the Punisher, he grows out his hair again. He quits being the Punisher. And then when he comes back to being the Punisher, he buzzes it all off again. And it's like, no, let his hair grow. And then in Season 2, it's like, yes, they finally let him have hair. But then he didn't wear the trench coat until like the last episode. And not even just the last episode. The last scene of the last episode. Like, come on, man. Let my boy Johnny B just be the Punisher. This is easily the best opening to any superhero TV show ever. The theme song, mwah, John Paisano, absolute master. This, incredible. The actual CGI logo itself, incredible. Like, all the symbolism in this intro is so poignant, and it all just factors into the character of Daredevil. In many ways, it also tells the story of the character of Daredevil. You have the imagery of Lady Justice symbolizing that justice is blind, but also too, the blood just connotes the fact that in order to seek justice, you have to make the streets run red with blood. You know, the streets of New York are running red with blood, and the only way the city can overcome this is if you take a leap of faith by crossing the bridge and going into the church, and to do all of that, you get the character of Daredevil. Like, seriously, the level of detail and storytelling and craft that is in this intro is just so thematically rich, and just, this is the best superhero show ever made, like, hands down. So since we are covering TV, yes, this won't be the most, like, accessible in terms of, like, you have to watch the show in order for certain scenes to make sense. Like, all this stuff with D.A. Reyes and the failure of the sting operation with Grotto, like, yes, this is all out of context, but we're not really going to be focusing on that in this episode. Because, yeah, I mean, it's all good, don't get me wrong, it's just the fact that you need the rest of the season to tell this part of the story.
How about you, Red? When I cracked off your forehead the other night, did you hear that?
And we, as the audience, Frank Castle, thank you for that, because yes, the Season 1 helmet of Daredevil is not very good. It looks quite silly. And although we have to deal with the bad helmet for this episode, in the next episode he gets the new Daredevil helmet, which we see in basically every iteration of Daredevil up to this point in live action, and it looks so much better. It is, like, so good. This helmet is not very good, but it doesn't matter because the show is great. God, Charlie Cox, my boy, he's so good. He is, as I've said many times now, one of, if not is the definitive comic book casting. Everything he does as his character, as Matt Murdock, as Daredevil, is pitch perfect, and I love him for it. He's like the perfect actor to portray a comic book character. Like, he did his research. He didn't know anything about the character beforehand, but then he dived in. He read as many comic books as he could, and he fell in love with the character, and he just is this character. You read any Daredevil comic from any Daredevil writer, be it Brian Michael Bendis or Frank Miller, he is Daredevil. Even when he shows up in terrible shows like She-Hulk, he's pitch perfect. He is the character.
What are you gonna do with all this?
I'll do what's required.
God, there's such a history to John Bernthal as Frank Castle. The pathos he brings to this character, to where, like, even just small little lines, he brings so much to it. Obviously, at this point in the story, we don't know about his backstory, about his family and the mob hit that killed his family, which ultimately turned him into the Punisher. We don't know anything about that yet, but you can tell it all from his voice.
If you get this, I'm in the ER. We need to talk.
Again, this subplot with Foggy looking for Matt in the hospitals isn't entirely relevant to why this is the best episode, but it is a really entertaining subplot. His interactions with Rosario Dawson as Claire is really fun. And the thing is too, is obviously, as I've said, I rewatched Daredevil Season 3 recently because Season 3 is the season I've seen the least. I've seen it twice now. Not that it's bad, I'm not saying that, it's just the season I've watched the least. And although I love Season 3, one of the things I did miss in Season 3 was Rosario Dawson as Claire, because I mean, she's great, she added something to the show, her as like the night nurse, she added something, and her not being in Season 3 was quite sad. Also, I do think it's very funny how Foggy's just like, hey, have you seen Claire? And then this nurse is just like, go look for her, whatever. And he finds her really easily. But hey, cinematographically, it's all done in one take, so it doesn't really matter, it's quite cool.
You know, no one else has to die. You can stop now, walk away.
Could you do that? Could you walk away?
One of the things that I love about this episode is how much it demonstrates how similar Daredevil and the Punisher are, but also how different they are too. Like, they are both seeking justice, but they just have different methods of doing it. Matt is all about redemption and hope, where the Punisher is all about retribution.
What is that, midnight?
St. Matthews.
You a Catholic?
Once.
Again, this episode does so much in trying to parallel Daredevil and the Punisher. Like, they're both Catholic, but Frank Castle abandoned his faith in order to seek vengeance and retribution and become the Punisher. Whereas Daredevil is motivated inherently by his sense of faith, by his sense of duty, by his religion.
You still go to mass?
Matt, why would you think he goes to mass? He is the Punisher. He's going around killing people and cold... Why would he be going to mass?
You run around this city in a pair of little boys' pajamas and a mask. You go home at night, right? Take that mask off, maybe you think it wasn't you who did those things.
Again, one of my favorite things about the writing is the contrast between Daredevil and the Punisher, to where Daredevil, he's wearing a mask, he can take off the costume, and he can be Matt Murdock, but Frank Castle is inherently the Punisher. He can't take it off. Whilst he may wear body armor with the symbol of the Punisher skull, at the end of the day, Frank Castle is the Punisher. He can't escape that. He is the soldier at war with the mob, with crime. And whilst in many ways Daredevil can be seen as a soldier of vengeance, of justice, or whatever, he has the luxury and the privilege of taking off that costume and trying in many ways to live a double life.
I don't do this to hurt people.
Oh yes you do, Matt. I mean, that's literally like half of Daredevil Season 1. That is like half of your character growth in Daredevil Season 1. Because whilst Matt Murdock tries to seek justice, he also has to use violence to get said justice. And there are many times throughout Daredevil Season 1 and 2 and 3 where he just enters this manic rage and just starts beating the ever-living hell out of people because he's got the devil in him. Like, again, it's a whole, like, thematic point in Daredevil Season 1 as to why he wears the devil costume, why he is called the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. It's all thematically earned, and that's what I love about the show.
I think you're a man who can't finish the job. I think that you're a coward. You know the one thing that you just can't see? You know you're one bad day away from being me.
Do you think the writers made that line intentionally right? But again, too, the conversation between these two men on this rooftop is just so compelling because they both raise big points. They both raise valid points. Matt Murdock's Catholicism and his idea of the sanctity of life is withholding him from, you know, killing people. Whereas Frank Castle has lost all of that. He doesn't need any of that. He sees killing people as a necessity. God, this episode is so good. Like, the morality and philosophy of this episode is just, it's so compelling to watch. Like, this is great writing.
Hey, Marine.
Yeah.
Semper Fi.
I really love this conversation between Frank Castle and this retired Marine because, again, it just shows, like, the duality of the Punisher to where, like, he is, at the end of the day, a human being. He can be likable. He can be personable. You can see the remnants of the old Frank Castle, what he was like before his family was killed. But ever since they've been killed, he has now become the cold, heartless killing machine. And it's all just so fascinating. Like, the way Jon Bernthal plays it, the way he's able to switch back and forth, it's so effortless, but also, too, it's so well done. Also, another detail too that I quite like is that Frank Castle has a certain affiliation towards soldiers, towards the Marines, because obviously he was a Marine.
You had a gun on him, you thumb back the hammer.
Well, that was for you. Part of the show.
Now, was Punisher telling the truth there? I think he was. Like, I don't think he would have killed that man if the man had gone out onto the rooftop and seen Daredevil. But then again, too, it's Frank Castle. You can't tell because, again, that, like, nice guy persona was a facade to a point. Again, the layers in Jon Bernthal's performance and the characters, just, mwah.
Okay. Are you listening? Yeah? How about now? You listening? Feel it?
God, it's so intense. Like, the intensity of Bernthal's performance mixed in with Charlie Cox's intensity, just... God, this is drama. This is so good.
What about you, Frank? What happens the day someone decides you deserve it?
Tell you what, they better not miss.
Let me tell you something, man. Okay, so one of my favorite things about Jon Bernthal as an actor, and it's kind of become a meme, is that he kind of has an acting tick to where I think when he improvs, or just every character he plays, they always want to tell us something, man. And I think it all kind of stemmed from Shane from The Walking Dead, but it's like every character Jon Bernthal plays has to say, let me tell you something, or I'll tell you what. Like, ever since the internet pointed that out, I find that so amusing.
Only I do the one thing that you can't. You hit them and they get back up. I hit them and they stay down. It's permanent.
God, the writing is so good. Like, the argument is so compelling because you can see both sides of the argument. And for the sake of conversation, which side of the argument do you fall on? Do you fall on the Punisher side or do you fall on Daredevil's side? Because I myself lean towards Daredevil's side because, you know, I'm an optimist. I believe in redemption. I do believe in hope. But at the same time, too, I can see Punisher's point of view. One of the things that I need to point out is just how inherently in character Charlie Cox and Jon Bernthal are. Like, you see these two on screen together. That is Daredevil. That is the Punisher. They are so perfectly casted. And the dialogue helps with that. Like, they are just authentically these characters. There's nothing that they do to where I go, that's not the Punisher. That's not Daredevil. This is lame. Never. Never in the show at all.
Time to put a face to all your fancy talk about redemption. Elliot Groot, a.k.a. Grotto.
Okay, so two things. One, adding Grotto into the show is really cool because Grotto in the comic books is like a low-level thug. And I love that season 2 included him. Obviously, he dies in this episode, but his inclusion in the show is cool. And two, Grotto serves to be the personification of Punisher's argument, the fact of redemption doesn't exist. And you can see the conflict in Matt grow as Grotto is forced to tell the story about how he killed an innocent old lady to get away. And although Matt has been presented with the case of Grotto, he still does believe in redemption, because that is inherently Christian and Catholic of him to believe in. And obviously throughout the season we see that conflict rise and grow, and we see Matt being swayed and such. Like, it's a whole thing in season 2, it's a whole thematic point. But in this episode, Daredevil has not been swayed by the Punisher's argument.
Take the shot.
Go to hell.
Too late.
Ah, so good. It's so good. It is so good. The performance, that line delivery, Charlie Cox, John Bernthal, mwah, chills. Absolutely incredible. Just, oh my god, this is the best superhero thing ever made. Like, the look in John Bernthal's eyes as he says too late, the tone in Charlie Cox's voice when he says go to hell, just, this is pure television. This is pure, and this is what filmmaking, TV making, this is what storytelling is all about.
What kind of choice is that?
The kind I make every time I pull the trigger.
God, this show does such a great job at making the Punisher so compelling. Like, lines like that, John Bernthal's performance to sell those lines, incredible. Really, Matt? You couldn't have done that like 20 minutes ago? Also, a thing I find amusing about the filmmaking is obviously you can see Frank Castle in the slow motion shot pull the gun away, but then like in the next shot you can see him like pull the trigger and shoot Grotto. You know what? Filmmaking mistakes can be fun. I feel like recently, especially like modern day like film or TV criticism, people like nitpick things when like certain things like this, it doesn't impact the storytelling, it doesn't impact the overall believability of the scene. It's just a little movie mistake. Like, movie and TV mistakes are fun. They should be included in media, because otherwise then, what's the point? Where's the fun in all of this? God, the level of depth this show puts into the Punishers, to where every time he pulls the trigger, he says one batch, two batch, penny and dime. Obviously, a nursery rhyme he used to tell his kids. It's just so impactful. It's just, they don't explain it in this episode. I think they explain it in episode 4, but it's so brilliant. Because again, it's a choice made that is inherently for the character. It is made to service the character.
Drop the gun!
Hallway fight. Hallway fight. Hallway fight. Another reason why this episode is fantastic is the fact that we get another one-take hallway fight. Now, the thing that I will say about the Daredevil hallway fights is that the best hallway fight is in season 1, because everything about it is incredible. From a technical perspective, it is so effortless, it is so smooth. You can't tell that there are any stitch cuts, because from what I can tell, and at least from what I know from like interviews with Charlie Cox and such, there are stitch cuts in the first hallway fight, but the filmmaking is so precise. Technically, it is so precise, you can't tell. But as the hallway fights progress, the stitch cuts become very obvious, especially in this one. Like, out of the 3 hallway fights, I think the season 2 hallway fight is the weakest one, but it's not bad by any means. The season 3 one is bold and ambitious. It's what, like 14 minutes long or something? It's insane. But yes, none of them have come close to the hallway fight from season 1. What about you?
I'm good.
God, Charlie Cox brings such a likability to Matt Murdock. Like, the whacking of the chains, and he's just like, don't worry, sir, I'm good. And then, like, when he does the gunshot with the empty barrel, and he's like, so good. The charisma from Matt Murdock, insane. Also, that is a nice Easter egg to the comic book cover. Hallway fight. Hallway fight. Hallway fight. Hallway fight. And yes, whilst some of the stitch cuts are very apparent in this fight, it's still a really cool fight. Especially the way Daredevil utilizes the chain mid-combat. It's so cool. Like, that stylized lighting makes this feel like a comic booky product. And they're also very reminiscent of like the Daredevil covers by, I've forgotten the artist's name, I'll put it up here. So yeah, the hallway fight finishes and Karen finds Frank Castle's x-ray of the skull. And that was my thoughts on Daredevil Season 2, Episode 3, aka the best episode of the show, because the writing is so good, the performing is so good, the cinematography is so good, the arguments, the way it's paced, we get a hallway fight and it's really cool to watch. Although yes, it is technically lesser than Season 1 and Season 3, but regardless of that, it's still a really cool, enjoyable fight to watch, and just goddamn, this show is so great, and I really hope that Daredevil Born Again lives up to it. Because like I said, Daredevil, Netflix Daredevil, is one of my favorite shows of all time. I love this show so much, and this episode is one of the reasons why. But those are my thoughts on Daredevil Season 2, Episode 3, aka the best episode of Daredevil. What do you guys think of this episode? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, leave me your favorite episode of Daredevil in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, all the good stuff. Until meet again, see you guys next time.